Live. All right, here we go. Let's see. I won't waste too much time in the beginning. Let's hit this intro music and see how this sounds.
It's nothing but Nets here on Talkin Nets. Brooklyn, we go hard, go hard. Talkin Nets. Hosted by Keith McPherson, Robin Lundberg, and Hudson Flynn.
All right.
An abrupt cutoff.
Yeah, I just ended it. I was like, all right, enough. Here we go. Talkin Nets, episode 166. Nets never start fast. We're 1-4. Welcome back, Keith McPherson, Robin Lundberg, Hudson Flynn. So the last episode that we had, we looked ahead to these games and we knew they weren't going to be easy against all playoff teams from last year, against superstar talent. You literally just went through a gauntlet, 2 games on the road where you face Ja Morant, who's being talked about as an MVP this year, Giannis, who obviously already has multiple MVPs, and Luka, who's every year the betting favorite to win MVP. And then you have Kyrie Irving, who's talked of winning an MVP, and Kevin Durant, who has won an MVP. But, we were just talking before we went live about how it doesn't matter if Katie and Kyrie score 30, 40 points a night. There's some issues here with the Nets that are deeper than those 2 top guys. So I welcome you guys in. How you doing, Robin?
I'm doing well. Look, I would be doing better if the Nets had won, but for the content, it's probably good. You need some of the sky is falling shows, and just hope that the sky isn't actually falling. I'm somewhere in the middle. I really am. I'm somewhere in the middle because there's a part of me that goes, oh my God, the same issues. They can't defend, second chance opportunities, and when something is a pattern like that, as long as it's been, then you think it is part of the inherent system, whether that's the coach or the culture or what have you. At the other end of the spectrum, I think there's a good team in there. They've played a tough schedule. The schedule's about to soften. You've got the Pacers back to back. They've been in games with the Bucks. There was a stretch in that game where if a couple shots go, maybe they can win that game. Same thing with the Grizzlies. They're in that game. They could have won the Mavs game as well. I thought Steve Nash, after the Mavs game, said some promising things about the future adjustments when it comes to the personnel. They're going to get some bodies back. They've at least competed some. So when we're thinking about this team as contenders, they are not contenders until proven otherwise. They're not good enough defensively. They allow too many extra possessions for the other team. But I also don't think it's a disaster. I think that there's a good team in there somewhere.
Yeah, I think there's a good team in there, but like you said, results have to prove otherwise. I love some of the things I've seen from the Nets. Obviously, it's good to see Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving back and scoring at the rate that they've been. But, my overarching thought, other than the fact that content's great. I mean, we had the video of Ben Simmons getting yelled at to shoot by Kyrie, did something like 2 million views on our Twitter because people love talking about the Nets. My overarching thought is the fact that the Nets have the expectation, and I think that doesn't go away, of being a contender for a championship, right? They have to be. If you're signing Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, you brought in James Harden, you trade him out for Ben Simmons, all that stuff. You have to have that expectation. So it's very high expectation for the Nets, but right now it doesn't look like we're even half that. But on the bright side, I think we have fixable problems, and I think we'll continue to have at least a mildly optimistic view of the time going forward with the Nets, if we can address some of these problems.
All right, so let's go back to Monday. Let's go back to the Memphis Grizzlies game at the FedEx Forum. The Nets lose that game 134-124. So when you just hear the score right away, you're like, well, damn, they gave up 134 points. They scored 124 points and weren't able to win. Here's my thoughts at that, going back to that game. The Memphis Grizzlies, I said on the last episode, the Memphis Grizzlies always beat us. It doesn't matter. Like, I think they beat the Nets the last 5 times in a row. And when you go down there to Memphis, to their place, the FedEx Forum, these young guys have a vibe in there. They have a confidence in there. They're dancing and swagging. And, hey, I mentioned John Morant, but Desmond Bane is another bully. We let him knock down shots in the second half, and I think they just checked the Nets' chin. You know what chin checking is. It's just like just trying to see how tough you are. And I think there is a word out on the street, which we already know. Markieff Morris, shout out to Markieff Morris. He's supposed to be rejoining the team Saturday. He hasn't been with the team these last 3 games. But Markieff Morris said this in media day. He said, like the Nets were soft and people knew you could run through their chest. When he was with the Miami Heat, they all knew, hey, just go through these guys' chests, be physical with them. And now you've got guys like Ben Simmons, and of course he's not in full rhythm yet. They're checking him. He's fouling out. He's getting teed up. That's another thing. There's been so many technical fouls on the Nets. In this Memphis game, I just looked at it as, okay, they were with them in the beginning. They had the lead at some points, and they had a 7-point lead at one point. And in the second half, the Grizzlies came out and punched them in the mouth, and they didn't have enough defense to stop them. I feel like they just got bullied a little bit. Robin, what were you thinking watching that Memphis game on Monday?
Well, the Nets are a weak team. They just soft, weak, however you want to put it. They don't get enough defensive stops when it really matters. They constantly give up second chance opportunities to the other team, whether it's their turnovers or not securing a defensive rebound. They constantly go through these lapses where you just are like, what are you doing? Or you make a mistake on a rotation and you leave an open 3-point shooter there. And that's something that has to be proven otherwise. They have to show that's not who they are. I think they've been more competitive this year. I mean, for the encouraging sign, I think they've taken some of these punches and tried to come back in some of these games. Now, eventually that has to show up in the results. But yeah, I mean, when they play, first of all, the Grizzlies are an actual contender. And when you play these big physical teams that have a level of physicality about them, that's generally the Nets' Achilles heel. So, I mean, until that fundamental issue is addressed, because the Nets are never going to be a burly team. They're never going to be the most physical team in the league. They're built to score. They're built to spread the floor. They're built to shoot. But they also have to show, hey, you're not going to just push us around, and we're going to gang rebound, and we're gonna get the ball and push it and set up our shooters that way. And that label, soft, weak, applies. It's a fair label.
Yeah, I think they're weak. And if you're looking at things from that game that I think you can actually take and expand out to other games, because, John Morant is an MVP candidate. Kevin Durant said that he's going to be one of the faces of the league going forward. Him putting up big numbers on the Nets is not something that anyone should be surprised by. But the kind of thing that I think is going to, really cause problems for the Nets is someone like Desmond Bane, who, and I actually turned on parts of the Memphis home broadcast for a little while to hear how they were talking about this matchup. And Desmond Bane had not been playing well going into this game. He had not been someone that they believed was hitting his stride in the way that he had last season, or in a way that they were expecting for this season. And he puts up 38 points against the Nets, mostly in the second half. And that's the kind of thing where I think, if we can stop other teams' primary scorers, if we can stop them, that's, icing on the cake. But we can't get killed by secondary scorers. There's going to be matchup nightmares for the Nets, but Desmond Bane isn't the kind of person that we should be allowing to score 38 points. That's the kind of killer, the Nets killer, that we've seen happen in the past. And that's something that I think genuinely needs to be addressed, because whether it's issues with rotation, messing up on defensive alignments, any of that stuff, it seems to really coalesce for the Nets, particularly in the second halves of games when we are trying to, whether it's secure a lead or stay in the game or come back from a small deficit. It seems to really kill us. And not to jump ahead too much, but we saw a great example of that in the Mavs game last night in overtime, and the Mavs hit those back-to-back threes. The Nets struggle with stopping that second score, and if we can't stop that second score going forward, I think genuinely that is something that might cause bigger problems for the Nets going forward than anything else we've seen so far.
There was a lot of chirping in this game early on. I feel like the Nets came to play. They have been competing. They know that teams are trying to punk them. There was some chirping early on with Dylan Brooks and KD and some texts in this game. Before we move on, I'll say this. Taylor Jenkins is one of the best coaches in the NBA. And we've already talked about the matchup between superstars in each game. You can't leave out the head coaches either. So this is Taylor Jenkins versus Steve Nash. And this is another game where you come out at halftime or you come out after halftime and they get smacked. That third quarter is where you lose the game and it starts to separate. And Desmond Bane ended up having 38 points. He went crazy from three. He was 8 for 11 from deep. And in the beginning of the game, he didn't have that many points. I think out of his 38, he might have had like 10 or 13 points in the first half. He poured it on in the second half. They also had this guy, Santi Aldama. Santi Aldama is the guy that was chosen in the draft right after Day'Ron Sharpe. So Day'Ron Sharpe was picked 29 and Aldama was picked 30. So those two will forever be linked. Day'Ron is not exactly there yet. And you'll see where I'm going with this as we get through the rest of the games. He played how many minutes in this first game? In this Memphis game, he played 14 and a half minutes. Joe Harris had 22 minutes. Joe Harris is another guy. He's not the Joe we've seen in the past. He's trying to also work back after missing a lot of time. You need him on the floor for spacing, but man, do we need him to knock down his shots.
When he's open, he's got to hit his threes. I mean, like, that's why you exist. That's why you're paid the money that you're paid. Sorry, when you're open, you got to hit the open threes, Joe Harris.
Right. He's not out there for his defense. He was 2 for 7 from deep. It's tough to win when they're hitting their threes and you're not. It's that simple. Like it's a make or miss league. They're making their shots. You're not. Kevin Durant had 37 and he started early. Kyrie had 39. It does not matter. These guys can go for damn near 40 and not get it done. All right, let's see. Oh no, that was the Mavericks score. I'm looking at different box scores, but it was close, right? Literally. So what did I just say in this Mavericks game? Kevin Durant had 37, Kyrie had 39. In the Grizzlies game, Kevin Durant had 37, Kyrie had 37. It's the same thing. All right, let's move on. So from, the loss down there in Tennessee to the Memphis Grizzlies, who were the number 2 seed in the West. They're a good team. All that talk about them being better with Ja Morant is foolish. He's a superstar, and they're going to be competitive all year. So the Nets lose there to open up this quick little road trip. Then they go to Wisconsin, and I've been out there by the Pfizer Forum. I hate that place. It is a house of horrors, and the officiating is trash there. I said on the last episode that I thought Giannis was a dirty player. He's just a bull in the china shop. That's what I label him as. The dude runs into people, he pushes people, he kicks people, he is underneath people when they're trying to land. He's just reckless. And I feel like they don't know how to call him. Like they do not know how to officiate him. They're in awe of him. Even listening to Capper and Carino on Brooklyn Nets radio, they were trying to figure out a guy that they were reminded of that was, officiated so hard to officiate. They threw Shaq out there. And I'm like, Giannis is different than Shaq. Like Giannis is a different player than Shaq. But going into this game, there's somewhat of a rivalry. It's not really a rivalry when the other team always wins. The Bucks were 3-1 against the Nets last year and, beat the Nets on opening night. Here they go. They beat the Nets again. The first two things that I think about when I think about this 110-99 loss to the Bucks, Giannis had 9 points in the first half, and the Nets had I think, 12-point lead at halftime. Completely different second half. Steve Nash gets ejected. There's a bunch of technical fouls there, and Giannis has his way. They literally let this guy push KD, shoulder KD. There was one play where Sharpe was guarding him, and they called a foul on Sharpe, and it clearly wasn't a foul. What were you thinking, Robin, watching this Bucks game? It's like deja vu.
Yeah, I didn't think that KD play was a big deal. I think you see those sort of screens happen all the time. It's just Giannis is bigger and stronger. Giannis is the new Shaq. He is the new Shaq because he doesn't play the same way as Shaq, but that's the way the game has evolved, right? He's the big physical presence that nobody can stop. Reckless is a better word than dirty. I would agree with reckless. He can do anything. The refs let him do anything. And that's the problem. How are you going to stop this guy if when he shoves off with his forearm, it's a foul on you? Those are the plays that drive me crazy. He's throwing the guy down. and then they're calling the foul on the guy who's on the ground. So as good as Giannis is, as relentless as he is, you're not going to be able to stop him if he's getting that sort of whistle. So what I think that the positive for the Nets from that game and from Nash is trying to plant the seeds and say, hey, because the Nets have gotten, this is not Homer talk, the Nets have gotten a bad whistle. KD doesn't get some of the calls that I think he should get. Some of these calls go against them in these key moments that swing games. And I think that's what Nash was trying to say there is like, how many times does this have to happen over and over again? And they're never going to beat the Bucks if Giannis is scoring at the rate he's going to score, because you just can't stop him. And then he's getting free points on top of it that maybe should be putting him in foul trouble. If a couple of those go the other way, then Giannis has 2 or 3 fouls and he's sitting down, because we saw Nick Claxton pick up fouls in a game early. It was at the Bucks or the Grizzlies game, but where he had to go sit down, and that just changes up the rhythm of the game. So I think if there's a positive from that, it's Nash trying to fight for the team and trying to plant those seeds a little bit. But yeah, like if Giannis can get away with anything, the Nets are never going to beat the Bucks.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that I kind of honed in on, which, I was late to the not hate train, but the Giannis dislike train. A lot of people, there's a lot of, circles on NBA Twitter and especially within the Nets community that really don't like Giannis, whether they think he's a dirty or a reckless player, they think, his play style is unattractive, whatever. I was late to that train, but I can't get past, and I mentioned this earlier to Robin and Keith before we started recording, and I put out a tweet that got a lot of negative responses from Buck's Twitter, but I don't think he's very exciting to watch. I
hate his game.
I don't think
I hate his game.
I don't think if you're getting those kinds of calls, I don't think it didn't, to me, it didn't feel like there was, not that there wasn't competitive balance, because I think there's always players that are going to be cheat codes in the NBA, but if you're so good, and Giannis is, and the current version of the NBA game is really so tailored to him, getting those fouls is the cherry on top of the cake for him that I don't think makes him very interesting to watch anymore. If every time he drives, he's allowed to travel, if every time he takes a free throw, he's allowed to, get a delay of game warning, and it doesn't really change much of anything. If those things keep happening, it loses that interest to me, because I love it when the Nets play against good players. I even didn't totally hate it when the Nets played against him in the playoffs 2 seasons ago. But the way he exists now and the way that he's getting called, not even from a Nets homer perspective, just makes games where he plays, even as a neutral, kind of uninteresting. Because if he's not going to get those calls, then there's really no competition, right? If Giannis is not able to get foul calls and he's able to put up, 40 points and 15 rebounds every night without any type of repercussions, of course the Bucks are going to win games, and that's the way it works, but it's just not very exciting. There's not very much parity if that's the way things are going to be allowed to continue.
I disagree with both of you. I think he's exciting to watch. I think he's an awesome player and a complete force of nature. And it reminds me of like being a little kid complaining about Shaq. Well, I can't shoot the ball. I can't do this sort of stuff. But Shaq was so dominant. And I realized later, however year old me was a hater at that time. Giannis is a monster. I wish his DNA could be shared with the Nets. I wish, like She-Hulk gets Hulk's blood and turns into She-Hulk. I wish some of Giannis's competitive spirit could be shared with the Nets. Yeah, because he never stops. He keeps coming downhill, and that's one of the reasons he's rewarded. One of the reasons he's rewarded is because of that force he plays with, and he never stops. Now, I agree that he gets away with anything, and that needs to change, and the refs need to stop kowtowing to him. And it gets a little corny when he's always like, oh, I'm just a role player. I'm not good. I'm not, we get what you're doing, dude. You're doing the whole I'm so humble act so people like you. But he's an awesome player, an all-time great player, exciting to watch, with the caveat of he can't just get away with everything, or it's not fair to the team that's playing.
Yeah, but is that interesting to you? That's my question. Me, is it if he's going to get those foul calls, is it interesting? Is that something that you enjoy watching for an entire game?
Celtics? Did he lose to the Celtics last year?
He did.
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah. So
I mean, he can lose, but we've watched so many games of like just him traveling, him fouling, him being able to just play a different game than other guys and teams can play. He's allowed to have his way. It is miraculous to me. Like Hudson cited the violation at the foul line. we were in there in Barclays counting down how long it took. In the beginning of that series, they had the counter on the big screen. The NBA made the Nets take the counter off. He is a darling. He's an international darling. They cater to him, and they won't even, like, I don't know. They're never going to change it. It's like they don't even know how to call him. He gets away with things, and that's why I say I hate his game. It's not like he's smooth. He's a bull in a china shop.
Yeah.
And I get it. He's dominant. But for me, not even as a Nets fan, when I watch him, I'm like, get this guy out of here,
See,
man.
I don't think you could separate the Nets fandom from it a little bit because it keeps happening.
There's
I sense a little hater. I gotta be honest with you guys. I sense a little hater coming through. But I understand. It's not that the critiques are invalid. The critiques are valid, and especially the other night again, like or whoever they're going against. That's the thing. The biggest thing for me that they need to change is everybody gets away with the travel here and there. It's when he's initiating the contact on the drive by lowering his shoulder or by putting his forearm up, and then you're calling the foul on the defender. Like, that is absurd. It's an absurd call, and that needs to stop. But I'm not going to sit here and say Giannis isn't fun to watch or I hate his game. I mean, I would, if Giannis was on the Nets, you would be endlessly cheering. You'd have Giannis pom-poms on either side, and you'd be saying,
of course. No,
yeah.
I'm not
Like
I'm not out here
fans.
claiming to be better than anybody. I would love Giannis if he was on the Nets, obviously. And you're right. I can't take that hater DNA out of my system, but there's just something about it that it's gotten boring, even though I really did like him, even up until the playoffs 2 years ago.
I never liked him. I never thought he was good.
I never thought he was good.
I just look at him as a football player out there. It's like, this guy's not playing basketball. He's allowed to play football. He's allowed to walk. That's why Steve Nash was bugging out.
Look at those eyes.
Steve Nash was bugging out. You know what got Steve Nash ejected? Like, the first time we've ever seen Steve Nash ejected, bugging out like this, was because of the elbow that he sent into Patty Mills, who's half his size. Patty goes flying back, and they don't call it. Like, we're watching a different game when Giannis is on the court. And, I feel like there's a target on Ben Simmons as well. It's been super corny to watch as a Nets fan this early on. It's like everybody roasts Ben Simmons. I'm watching SportsCenter yesterday in the morning, and this is the shot chart they put up for Ben Simmons second half versus the Bucks. He obviously didn't take any shots. Why does the national worldwide leader of sports have to use him to troll him or use this to troll him and make him the butt of every joke? It's like, it just piles onto the Nets, right? Because they all, between Kyrie, then the shoot it, Ben. I don't know. It's nonsense, man. It's like no one cares about the Nets, but everyone cares about the Nets, and everybody wants to roast and troll and make fun of the Nets. And you add Ben Simmons to this, and they've got unlimited jokes now.
Well, people can't separate emotions from analysis. That's first thing. You see it all the time. Why does LeBron still have haters? Because you can't hate on LeBron's career, yet people will figure out a way to do it. They'll do mental gymnastics because they dislike him. People dislike the Nets. Outside of Nets fans and people who think they're cool or whatever, like, there's an animosity toward the Nets, in particular some of the Nets players. Kevin Durant for stuff he's done online, requesting the trade, whatnot. Kyrie Irving for whatever you want to call it, his mercurial nature, and Ben Simmons for not playing and sitting out with the Sixers and not taking that shot and the holdover from Philadelphia fans. Then there's also a trend in our culture, social media culture, and sports media, and I'm a part of it. I deserve some blame. I try to be cognizant of this in the content I put out, but there are these people and players and figures who become the butt of jokes. And that gets clicks, that gets comments, that gets people talking. And, it's going on with Russell Westbrook in LA. It's very similar. And Ben Simmons is that guy right now where it's hot. It goes back to the practice shot, right? It's ha Ben Simmons. That's what people are looking for and ignoring everything else. Now, Ben, as a basketball player, has got to be better. I mean, there are times where he's unplayable, but he has a legitimate excuse. Like, when you say he hasn't played that long and he had back surgery, that is a legitimate reason to give him some patience, and give him some time to get his confidence back, to get his rhythm back. And I like what Steve Nash said after the Mavs loss, that Ben at the 5 is going to be a big part of what the team does going forward. I think that's his natural position now I think it's where he'll be the most effective. I think from a strategic standpoint, separating him and Nick Claxton needs to be done as much as possible because each of those guys is going to be at their best without the other. Day'Ron Sharpe should not see the floor until sometime maybe down the line. But as of now, Day'Ron Sharpe should not see the floor. So Ben Simmons at center, I think, will open up things for him a little bit. Let him do what he still does well, which is set up three-point shooters. He showed some flashes in that game against the Mavericks. Good defense down the stretch. But what is everybody going to share? The air ball layup. And then the air ball layup combined with the fact that he went under his point total means he's a total garbage can. and that is what it's going to be. There's no reasoning with that until Ben Simmons goes out, and this is on him. And I'm going to give him time. I'm going to give him 3 or 4 weeks, whatever the case may be. But until Ben Simmons goes out on the court and shoves one down on somebody's face and gets the ball and goes in transition and says, this is why I was a 3-time All-Star. This is why I was the Rookie of the Year. This is why I was once regarded as, one of the number one assets in the league, and you were arguing who you'd rather have, me or Joel Embiid. Until he does that, and the Nets win some games as a result of him doing that, this is how it's going to be. And otherwise, you're just fighting back against the way things are. Yeah,
and the NBA is a league with a short memory. There was a time when, especially among Nets fans even, Ben Simmons was a genuine menace. Like, he was genuinely, like you said, a 3-time All-Star, Rookie of the Year, debates over him and Joel Embiid. He was that player. And this to me doesn't read as something similar, although the narratives may be, to a Russell Westbrook situation where Russell Westbrook is clearly on the decline of his career, right? Russell Westbrook was that MVP caliber player.
I mean, as the punching bag and the guy that everybody's going to mock.
Right. Narrative wise, it is. Yeah. But Ben Simmons isn't someone that you have to regard in that way because he has so much time ahead of him. He has so much of a chance to get himself back to that form. And it's a hot take league we live in. It's a hot take culture, hot take society, whatever. Social media is ruling the day. But what I worry about is that infecting Nets fans. And I have already seen that it has infected Nets fans because it's okay if that's the national media talking about that. But as soon as your own fans start to turn on you, as soon as your own fans of your team start to turn on you, I think that's really when it starts to click, I would say probably, in his head. And that's something that Ben has, admittedly struggled with, the mental side of the game. And that's something that is really important to acknowledge and to to foster and to take care of, particularly with the way social media works, in 2022. So I think that's what really needs to change is that Nets fans, they can't fall victim to that trap. And athletes, they notice these things. And Keith, you're a big Yankee fan, obviously. You saw, I don't know who the quote was from, but Yankee fans being shocked that Aaron Judge got boos during the most recent playoffs. It's something that affects them. When their own fans turn on them, it's something big. So Nets fans
play better. Play better.
I don't know, though, because if you're going to be affected by that, like, I don't know. Nets fans want to be a good team, and if the more you start booing Ben Simmons, the worse the team is going to be.
But there's a line between coddling and being fair.
Giving him a month isn't coddling. No,
Yeah, but the whole he does have to play better. Keith is right in that sense. Play better. How do you silence it? Play better. That's the solution to
play better.
And he is playing better.
He is. And
you're honing in on one aspect, though.
Don't get me wrong, Hudson. That's also going from like the Yankees. You got to play better. I'm in the stadium when the fans boo them. Sometimes they're just booing them, making the last out. With Ben Simmons, I don't think Nets fans are going to boo him. But what it is there were Nets fans expecting him to help against the Celtics last year. He definitely wasn't ready to enter that series when the Nets got swept. They said he left the group chat. No, he wasn't even ready to go then. So now, after all of this time and going into this year, I think there are Nets fans that are waiting to see the value in Ben Simmons, and it's not there yet. But the Nets team, even Kyrie came out and said, you guys want to come in here and ask me every day about Ben? We're on his ass. We're on his shit every day. But we're giving him positive affirmations. Like, they're working with him. They know, right? These are hoopers that know. And you guys know, if you don't step on the court for a couple months, your handle's not the same. Your shot is off. Your reflexes, how you react to things on the court, right? Anybody in the chat that hoops, and we are not NBA players. So imagine the highest level of competition, and you haven't played in 470 days. You're not going to be right in 5 games. This guy needs a whole month. until we can see him get back. And he has flashes, right? He has it. He makes good passes. We just need him to do a little bit more, and it will come with time. But honestly, I think what's going to happen here, we already mentioned Day'Ron Sharpe. I said he played 14 and a half minutes in the first game, 13 minutes in the second game. Let's move on to the third game, the Dallas Mavericks game that we watched last night. Day'Ron Sharpe got a DMP, and you're facing Luka, another MVP candidate. You're facing Jason Kidd, another top coach in the league, a top basketball mind, one of the greatest. Obviously, Jason Kidd, former Brooklyn Net. We all remember. So, or New Jersey Net and Brooklyn Net coach. So you go into this game at home, Spencer Dinwiddie back, and Luka and the shooters that he has around him. I don't know. I'm looking at this game. They competed last night, but I didn't ever think they were gonna win. Even when it got late, I'm like, you're gonna get out coached. It's a make or miss league. They're making shots. Royce O'Neal coming from the Bucks game, he had misses in that Bucks game, and I know they want to rely on him. They want to have confidence and faith in him, but he missed a bunch of shots down the stretch. Missing shots from the Bucks game. They went 5 minutes without hitting a shot in the fourth quarter. You're not gonna win like that. And then the same thing carried over to the Dallas Mavericks game. Even though they were able to force OT, it's just not enough. 41 from Luka. He had his way. He was mad when Kidd called that timeout late. He wanted to, finish them in regulation. It goes to overtime. And the biggest thing in overtime, I think they hit 3 threes or back-to-back threes, and you just see them coming off screens, guys wide open, hits the shot versus the Nets that are trying to improvise and draw something up or make it up on the fly, and they can't get the ball in the basket.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why any encouragement has a disclaimer, just because you expect the Nets to lose those games every time. And eventually that result needs to flip. You can't just always expect them to lose those type of games. I like the fact that Royce O'Neal's shooting it without hesitation, whether it's going in or not. There was one he took at the top of the key that I was just like, it missed, but I was like, good shot. Like he took it in rhythm. He wasn't afraid to shoot it. You got to let it fly because you hurt your team when you don't let the open shots fly. That's one of the reasons Ben Simmons hurts the team was when he's out there and he's not even looking at the basket or he's not, all I want from Ben, I don't care how many points he scores. All I want him is to attempt the shots that he can make, like just attempt them when they're there. And that's why the Kyrie thing blew up. How many times has that happened to you on a court where somebody else, like I've had it happen to me because, I'm more comfortable with the jump shot than I am in the paint as I've gotten older. And if I pass up on a layup, people are going to say, you got to shoot the ball, and that's what Kyrie was saying to Ben on that play. But I think some of what you got at, Keith, is going to help the Nets going forward because it'll put Ben in a position to succeed if he's playing at a big spot more. It'll put Claxton in a position to succeed if he's getting more minutes without Ben on the floor. And I think when you bring Seth Curry in, who's a proven knockdown shooter, that can help with that. I think TJ Warren might be the biggest wild card because he's the guy with the most potential to be a third player who can just sort of score and create when things get tough, because you're never going to feel confident when it's Joe Harris or Royce O'Neal barreling to the basket, right? Like anytime you see that happening in your head, you're going, no, you'd rather Kyrie be taking a fall away three.
But David Duke, though, David Duke Jr.
I like
good to see him
from Sumner. So, because the Nets need somebody who's going to take the ball to the rack. They don't have anybody who's taking the ball to the rack.
In the Bucks game, Edmund Sumner comes in, and he's an immediate impact. He has 7 points in 5 minutes, and then you don't see him again.
Well, Nash got ejected. I do think he said that after the game. Like maybe by the time, so I can't put that on Nash. I mean,
it's same with Yuta though.
But Luka was going at Yuta. I mean, look, he's a good player. I like him as an addition, but he was also on the floor, and Luka was picking on him. That's what he was trying to diagnose every play when he's coming down. He's like, get this guy on me. So that factors in too. I think with Nash, I've seen some encouraging signs from the competitive spirit of the team, particularly from Kyrie, by the way. Let me give Kyrie a little credit. Kyrie's been
playing hard.
He wants to play both ends. He wants to have a complete season. He's been the Nets' best player so far. He's playing both ends of the floor. I have no complaints with this version of Kyrie Irving. KD, is KD. I think he needs to be a little bit stronger with the ball. I'd like him to make a little bit more of an impact on defense, but overall, you're not worried about KD. Nash, they're playing with a little bit more of a competitive spirit. It looks like he's about to make an adjustment that I think will be good for the team. He got himself kicked out of the game. My biggest complaint with Nash right now, whether this is his fault or not, is just that the same issues as we talked about at the beginning of the show are rearing their head over and over again, where the Nets can't secure the ball and they can't get stops. And that will eventually be what is his undoing more than anything else if they don't get to turn it around. But the schedule's about to soften. This is the most important stretch of the season coming up because these are games that they need to win.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one interesting point that you kind of alluded to at the end. What's up with Kevin Durant's handle? He's been
Lazy
losing the ball.
sometimes, sloppy
He
sometimes.
it's
Turnovers been killing the Nets
interesting
too.
to see. And like you said, Keith, it's on one hand you have so many self-inflicted wounds, whether it's maybe fouls that shouldn't go the Nets way, whatever, but the turnovers are something that, boy, I hope the Nets don't develop a reputation as a team that, is liable to turn the ball over in a serious way. But, to me, it's starting to feel like it might be going that direction. But again, the only takeaway I can have from this game is that 125 points is great if your opponent doesn't put up 135, right? You can't allow points like that. Robin, I see you got something to say.
Yeah, well, you hit on it though with the turnover. Basketball's a game of possessions, fundamentally. It's a game of possessions. Each team has a certain amount of possessions in the game. So sometimes the Nets' first line defense isn't even that bad, but when you're turning the ball over as often as they do, and you're giving up as many second chances as often as they do, I promise you go back through the box scores and you just look at field goal attempts. And the team that they're playing is going to have more field goal attempts because they're getting more possessions. And KD's turnovers are not normal turnovers. They're bad ones because it almost always leads to a layup for the other team. So I think that's something he really needs to secure the ball better and set the tone in that regard. But yeah, that's what I was getting at is part of it's not even just defense. It's the fact that, in a game of possessions, when one team's getting more than the other, it's gonna show up on the scoreboard.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember I was talking to someone close to me just the other day who not a big basketball fan, was asking how there are blowouts in basketball when it's so, one team gets a chance, the other team gets a chance, one to the other. That's how, given the ball to the other team, right? That's how the Nets
and the 3-point shot nowadays.
And the 3-point shot. But that's how you run into problems like the Nets are running into. Because I actually, last night, I liked the fight. I liked the resiliency. I liked the ability to get that game to overtime. I loved Ben Simmons' steal at the end of that game. We talked about Ben Simmons needing to show improvements. He did. He played a better game. I remember, I think, Robin, you might have even tweeted about it. There was one play I really liked with Ben Simmons where he didn't even make the shot. He went down the court. He took one of his hook shots, I think from like just to the right of the basket. He missed it. Clax got the rebound, ended up with a foul. But to see him taking those shots, that's improvement. And I'm not usually someone who's a moral victories type of player because, like you said, Robin, we're going to have to start changing those L's into W's at some point. We can't be expecting to lose all of these close games. But out of all of these 3 games, I would say the most sign of improvement, even though the defense was tough, even though the turnovers were tough, I would say it's coming from this Mavs game. And going ahead to what Robin has called the most important stretch of this season, we need to see those moral victories turn into ones on the court against lesser opponents.
Yeah. It's surprising to see the Nets still be in these games with their lack of defense, with the amount of turnovers they have. And I guess you can attribute that to the scoring of KD and Kyrie. I feel like they need another piece. And what I'll say is they're missing some pieces right now. Seth Curry is on the mend. Seth Curry's on the way back. He will change things. Markieff Morris is supposed to rejoin the team tomorrow. TJ Warren is on the mend. I don't know how long it's going to take for him to get back, but this thing's going to evolve. You know what I'll say about the Nets? They've done this the last few years. In the beginning of the season, they try things out. They try players out, right? Like you're seeing now Cam Thomas is not getting any burn. And when we were all together opening night, he got off the bench, and I was like, oh, he got in the game quick. So now he's getting DMP'd. Now you're not even seeing him. You're not seeing Day'Ron, Kessler last night. All 3 of these second-year players that the Nets depended on last year, they're not using. But David Duke got some run. He was in there. He had to guard Luka late. He ended up fouling out, but he got some run, and I didn't mind seeing him. He was in street clothes the game before. So what I'll say is the Nets are always trying things out. Maybe it's a Nash thing. Maybe he's trying to figure out who he has, what he has, and at the cost of losing some close games to playoff teams, they'll lose these games. They don't really care too much about the beginning of the season. the name of this episode is The Nets Never Start Fast. Ian Eagle came out and said they've never been better than 2-2 in the first 4 games of the season. So they use these beginning games as a trial run, test run. And now coming up, we'll look ahead. Send your questions in the chat if you have any questions for us before we wrap up here. But we'll look ahead to the Nets schedule. We've already talked about these Pacers games back to back, and the NBA has these like home and home series set up. I know the Spurs and Timberwolves just did one. I think the Heat and the Raptors might have just did one. And here we are. We're about to host one. It's Pacers Nets tomorrow at 7:30, and then they run it back Pacers Nets Monday, Halloween at 7:30. I think they got this whole like Halloween trick or treat thing set up for the kids if you're looking to go to the game with your kids on Monday. And then they host the Bulls. We'll probably have an episode after they host the Bulls. We'll let them get the 2 Pacers games in, and then they'll have a game Tuesday against the Bulls November 1st, and then we'll probably come back Wednesday sometime with a new episode after those 3 games. But you guys have already said it. Tell me what you're thinking. I think these are winnable games. The Pacers,
well, if they're not winnable games, the Nets suck.
Nets are a bad team if these aren't winnable games.
But nothing is guaranteed. You don't know how it's gonna go. They should win. They should beat the Pacers twice. And the Bulls right now aren't. I'm not sure of their record, but they're not the Bulls of last year.
All these games are at home, right? Like this is a stretch where you got to go 3-0.
Yeah, you need it.
Yeah,
you absolutely need it.
And then 3-0 all of a sudden it's 500, and the next episode we're in a whole different mind frame.
The Bulls are 3-2. The Pacers are 1-4. So if you can't beat the Pacers twice, something is seriously wrong. And then you'll have some competition with DeMar DeRozan and the Bulls, but these are not the Bulls last year that were the number 1 seed going back and forth with us. They're missing a couple guys. These are winnable games. And at 1-4, if you can go win these next 3 games, you're back to 500. 4-4, feeling a little bit better about going forward and getting guys back, getting healthier, and seeing what this full team looks like. All right, who else do we need on the roster? The guys that aren't playing. So I mentioned the 3 names that I'm looking at: Seth Curry, Markieff Morris, and TJ Warren. And Markieff will be back Saturday, tomorrow against the Pacers. I'm not sure about Seth Curry, but they did say that I think he's ramping up now. He was with the Long Island Nets, and the Nets recalled him, so he's on the way. And TJ Warren, they said November, so we're a couple days away from November. I think he could be back in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, all those are important additions. Obviously, the lack of somebody with true size is something that's going to come up. Ben needs to, if he's going to be playing, guide the team a little bit as a ball handler. They can always use more ball handlers. That's where Seth Curry, TJ Warren come in. But you had talked earlier in the show, Keith, about last year when Ja Morant went down and the Grizzlies kept winning games, right? And it feels like with the Nets, we're always like, well, this guy's not here or this guy's not here. Some of it becomes ingrained in how the team plays together with purpose and the consistency they bring from a focus standpoint. I just finished coaching little kids soccer, and I tell them all the time, focus is a superpower in sports. Focus is a superpower in sports. So talent is going to get you to the promised land, but that mind state and the way you go about your business is going to give you some consistency. And I think the Nets get much better when they get some of this personnel back. But we do need this team to get to the point where it doesn't matter who's in the lineup. You know what you're getting with them from a competitive spirit standpoint, a togetherness standpoint, because a team like Memphis just showed you last year, they can be without their best player and still win a lot of games.
Yeah. And there's no one who is under the illusion that the Nets are a finished product, whether it's, getting everyone to have the run together, or I'm just assuming there's going to be at least some minor roster changes before the playoffs. But I think this team, like you said, Robin, I think they need to figure it out a little bit for themselves. And it's a sink or swim league, and you can't keep losing figure it out games. Eventually you're going to have to turn those L's into W's. But the answer, and this is directed to Nets fans, and particularly one Nets fan who just commented this in the live chat, the answer isn't players from elsewhere in the league. It's not Boogie. It's certainly not Boogie.
But
I don't
Boogie's
know
not an NBA player.
I don't know how many times we have to keep saying this. Boogie is not an NBA
He's
player.
done.
He's so washed. He's so done. It's not a conversation. But I think the team needs to look within itself. I think we always were so heavy on, in Marks we trust. The Nets have a roster. They have an NBA roster. That should be winning games. They have two veritable superstars, Ben Simmons, who can be an all-star caliber player when he's at his best. And they have a lot of young talent. They have theoretically good off-ball three-point shooters. We need to win games with the team that we have on the floor right now. We're very early in the season. We can't already be looking for, well, the Nets need to trade for another center. The Nets need to get this guy. The Nets need to bring Boogie Cousins out of retirement. It needs to be something that we figure out ourselves, or, like Robin said, injuries are a reality of the NBA. There's probably going to be a time where, KD, Kyrie, or both of them are injured, and we need to be able to win games without them. We need to be able to win games with the team that we have on the floor right now.
Yeah, I'm looking at this article with Cam Thomas saying, yeah, of course he was surprised he didn't play. He said, I ain't had no conversations with Steve Nash, just not playing at the moment. Very surprising. It is what it is. Maybe they're going to trade Cam. Maybe they're
I was screaming. You guys were there. I was screaming for them to take Cam out of the game. So I have no sympathy for him. He did not play well enough in game 1.
And that too. He's just not ready. Yeah. He's a bucket getter, but we got bucket getters. We need guys that are going to play defense. We need guys that are going to play their roles. Like I think Cam comes into the game looking to shoot, which is fine, but not on this team. Like that's not what this team needs. This team has enough guys that can score it. But we shall see, man. This is it. We're in the journey again after the offseason that the Nets had rolling into this season. I don't think anyone thought they were going to start fast. I don't think anyone thought they were going to be undefeated. Especially with the teams they faced. They have faced all playoff teams from last year. The Pelicans, the Raptors, the Grizzlies, the Bucks, the Mavs. That's a gauntlet to start the season, especially when you aren't fully healthy and you have new players like Ben Simmons and Royce O'Neal and Sumner and Watanabe and all of these guys trying to figure out who they are and what they are in this offense, defense, and in Steve Nash's scheme. Even with his decisions, like with these rotations and some of the guys that are playing together that we know shouldn't be playing together, like they are trying stuff out, and it's a work in progress. So as fans, we got to be patient. I listened to some of these spaces the last couple of nights, and I know Nets fans, are always negative and have seen the worst, so they expect the worst, but you got to understand it's early. You do have Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving on this team. They're going to figure out the, guys in between. And who knows? Maybe this is all trending so that Steve Nash gets fired and they make some big trades at the deadline. But like I said, I think either in the beginning of this episode or maybe I said it before we went live, there's other top teams struggling. It is so early that you can't really look at it and gauge too much. You can see, like we were talking about the Lakers. The Lakers are 0-4, and I don't know. The Clippers are 2-3. I don't know about them.
Well, the Lakers are a bad team. The Clippers, the whole Kyrie, Kawhi thing. I'm sorry, is nobody talks about it because Kawhi doesn't talk. But on a normal timeline, he was back for the playoffs last year, and now he had that whole year off, and he's still missing games. So
he does not want to play that bad. He does not want to be out there that bad.
And then there's Philly, right?
And then then Philly is 1-4, and you're just looking at even the Heat are 2-4. Some of these things don't belong. The Portland Trailblazers are 4-1 at the top. Teams are figuring it out. It's early. Golden State is ranked 9th at 3-2. It's so early you can't really judge too much. All we can hope as Nets fans is that they get it together sooner rather than later, and we'll be here talking you through it, walking you through it, giving our takes, our opinions. I think we're good on questions from the chat. Thanks for watching. And Cook Carter, what up, Cook? He said, you tripping talking injuries. This is Talking Nets. Yeah, nah. No one's coming to save the Nets. So, that's not what I'm talking about with, getting Seth Curry back or TJ Warren back. I don't expect them to come in and now the Nets are look like an all-star team, but they are not whole yet. And they're using these first few games as tests, trial, and error. And we can only hope that Ben gets better and Day'Ron Sharpe gets better or doesn't play, and they figure out these rotations. So tell a friend to tell a friend. Talking Nets is back. Appreciate you guys for watching and chatting and just being a part of what we do. Thanks for supporting Talkin Nets. And that's all we've got for this episode. You guys got anything else you want to add before we wrap?
The superstars. I mean, I like what I've seen from both of those guys scoring the ball, and I love what I've seen from Kyrie. KD, like you want to be mentioned with the Lukas and the Jaws and the Stephs and some of those guys. You can't be on a team that's spiraling out. Some of that's on you. So I would issue a challenge for him to bear that burden of responsibility.
I think the Nets just need to win these next games. I want to come back to Talking Nets at 500. That's it. Win the games. They're if they're not winnable, if you're not at least losing these games by one bucket, if not getting wins in all three of them, then I'm more worried about the Nets. Come back to Talking Nets at 500.
3 wins in a row. Yeah, and I'll add to KD. They're taking shots at KD. Isaiah Thomas taking shots at KD, saying, 30 points from KD used to be a win for the teams he's on. Now he's getting his 30 and taking L's, and they're putting him in the group of Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, LeBron, and KD. These guys that are up there in age that have been around and been dominant so long, they're struggling early on in their season. The narrative can change. KD can change the narrative. He's got to play a little better too. So let's go Nets. Let's go Nets. Let's go Nets. Brooklyn. We out of here. Thanks for watching.